September 19, 1944. The fog-covered fields near Ariour, France. First Lieutenant Merwin men of the 37th Tank Battalion held the rim of his Sherman tank turret, while his gunner looked through the periscope watching. The foggy land ahead, they had been told about Panthers, the strong German tanks with sloped armor that normal American shells could not break through. What men and his crew did not know was that inside their ammo rack were 6 shells that would change the way tank battles were fought, 6 M93 high-speed armor-piercing shells. Each one had a tungsten carbide core that could turn their medium Sherman into something German soldiers would soon fear. The shock of this new ammo was as great as its power breaking German beliefs about American tanks and making them rethink the Panthers' safety. The story of how this special ammo changed the power balance of tank battles did not start in France. It began in the test fields and factories of the United States where metal experts and weapon engineers raced against time to fix a problem that could weaken American tanks in Europe. In early 1944, the United States Army faced a problem that its war planners had not expected: the M4 Sherman, the M4 Sherman tank. The main strength of American armored forces was meeting German tanks. It could not beat from the front. The Panther Germany's reply to the Soviet T-34 had a strong 75mm high-speed gun and an 80mm front plate slanted at 55 degrees, making it as tough as about 140mm of straight armor. This was almost impossible for American tank guns to pierce. American scouts had guessed wrong about how many and how strong the Panthers would be by June 1944, when the Allied forces landed in Normandy. 38% of German tanks. There were Panthers, not just a few as expected, but hundreds of these new tanks. Many crews were not well trained, yet the armor kept them safe from American shells. The 75mm M3 gun used on most Shermans in Normandy could not break through the front of a Panther. At any distance, the shell would just bounce off the sloped armor and leave the Sherman open to return shots from the Panther gun, which could destroy a Sherman from more than 2,000 meters away. Even the newer 76mm M1 gun that started reaching units in July 1944 had trouble with Panther armor using regular M62 armor-piercing shells. The 76mm gun could only punch through 109mm of armor from 1,000 meters straight. This was enough to fight the Panzer IV and many German assault guns, but the Panther's slanted front armor stayed almost impossible to break. The 76mm gun could hit through the Panther gun shield, but only from very close, usually less than 100 meters a range, so dangerous that attacking was almost the same as suicide. The problem was not really the gun, but the kind of shells it fired. Getting the 76mm gun into service had been a long story of slow decisions and late changes. The first M4 Shermans with the 76mm M1 gun came off the factory lines in January 1944. These M4A176 tanks reached Britain on April 10, 1944, with 130 of them ready for the Normandy invasion. But even though they were there, American leaders chose not to use these better tanks on D-Day. There were several reasons. The crews had not practiced enough with the new weapon system. Supply officers worried about handling 2 different shell types. And most of all, the commanders thought the 75mm gun would be good enough for the German tanks they expected to meet. This turned out to be a huge mistake. By early July 1944, reports from Normandy told a sad story. On July 2nd, complaints about the 75mm guns. Weakness against German tanks reached General Dwight Eisenhower. His answer, written in many records, showed his anger. "You mean our 76 will not knock these Panthers out? Why? I thought it was going to be the wonder gun of the war." The full quote, as remembered by others, went on with even stronger words. He was angry that the weapon makers had told him the 76mm gun could handle any German tank, a group. Met on July 12, 1944, and confirmed what tank crews already knew from hard experience. Normal American guns could not beat Panthers. From the front, General Omar Bradley at once ordered the 76mm Shermans sent. From Britain to the battle lines on July 25, 1944, during Operation Cobra, 102 M4A176, tanks saw combat for the first time. The first battle reports were serious. While the 76mm gun was better than the 75, it still could not easily pierce the Panther's front armor at normal fighting distances. Sherman crews soon found they had to move for side shots or aim at the Panther gun shield. From close up, neither choice was good. When the enemy could hit them from 2,000 meters away, the answer would come from metal science and physics. By July 1944, American ordnance engineers developed the T4 round, standardized as the M93 HVAP high-velocity armor-piercing. Ammunition marked a major change from conventional armor-piercing design. The projectile used a tungsten carbide core, one of the hardest materials available, surrounded by a lightweight aluminum body and ballistic windshield. That design focused the projectile's kinetic energy into a smaller, denser penetrator while reducing overall weight. The result was dramatic. The M93 round reached a muzzle velocity of 1036 mph compared to 792 mph for the standard M62 round. This 244 mph velocity increase translated directly into greater penetrating power. At 1,000 wide approximately 914 millimeters, the HVAP round could penetrate 100 centimeter of armor at 10 deg obliquity, according to official War Department testing data against the Panther's gun mantlet, with its curved 100mm thick cast steel. On early RSSF-D and A, variants later increased to 120 mm. On the RSSF-GE, this meant reliable penetration at ranges up to 1,000 meters, instead of point-blank distance. The mantle suddenly became a viable target for Sherman crews, who had previously been forced to attempt desperate flank attacks or retreat. But the development of HVAP represented only half the solution. Production was another matter entirely. The T4 round depended on tungsten carbide, a strategic material, imported primarily from China, which produced 36% of global tungsten supply. Before the war, tungsten was critical to numerous war industries, with machine tools, armor-piercing ammunition for multiple calibers, armor plate hardening, and various industrial processes all competing for limited supplies. American tungsten demand for HVAP ammunition alone consumed hundreds of metric tons. Annually, each 76 cm HVAP round contained approximately 8 kilograms of tungsten carbide, meaning a Sherman carrying 6 rounds required nearly 5 kilograms of this scarce material. China produced approximately 1,000 metric tons of tungsten concentrates in 1944, but this had to serve all Allied needs across all applications. The United States supplemented Chinese imports with domestic production from limited deposits in Colorado, Nevada, and California, but total availability remained constrained. Germany's tungsten position was far worse, with Swedish imports declining sharply as the war turned against the Reich, and domestic production remaining minimal by 1945. German factories desperately hoarded tungsten for machine tools needed for aircraft engine production. While Panther crews received only standard ammunition, the United States Ordnance Department had been testing HVAP projectiles since spring 1942, but production at scale did not begin until after the Normandy landing showed how serious the Panther problem was. In July 1944, production of 3-inch HVAP rounds for tank destroyers reached 1,000 rounds. August saw 1,000 rounds of 76mm HVOP made September produced another 176mm rounds. Not until November 1944 did monthly production reach 5,000 rounds, for the 76mm increasing to 7,000 rounds per month by January 1945. By March 1945, about 33,000 rounds of 76mm HVAP ammunition had been produced, showing a major industrial effort, but still only a small part of what was needed by February 1945. The average 76mm Sherman in Europe had received a total of 5 AVAP rounds. 5 rounds to fight an enemy using Panthers. As the main tank in Panzer divisions, a Sherman company with 17 tanks would have 85 HVAP rounds total, while facing German units that might have 30 or more Panthers. The first HVAP rounds reached Europe in August 1944, but their arrival was less important because of bigger tactical problems. The Normandy hedgerows forced American tanks into close fighting, where German guns could ambush Sherman. Column's tank crews faced an enemy who had learned to put Panthers in hull-down positions, showing only the strong turret while keeping the weaker hull hidden. German strategy focused on first-shot advantage with Panthers, waiting in ready positions, letting Sherman columns come close before firing from ranges where American shots were useless. The mental effect on American tank crews was strong. Crews nicknamed the Sherman the Ronson lighter, saying it caught fire every time, while post-war analysis showed this reputation was bigger than the truth, but the idea still affected action tank leaders who saw Panthers often chose to call for artillery or air help instead of fighting directly, giving the enemy the chance to control the fight, even though they could be beaten with the right shells and tactics. The arrival of HVP rounds started to change this thinking, but slowly, because there were so few rounds and crews had little practice with what they could do. The first big combat test of HVAP ammunition did not happen in Normandy's hedgerows, but in the open land of Lorraine, where American armored units had moved into areas that favored German defenses. September 1944 found Lieutenant General George Patton's Third Army deep in France, rushing toward the German border with supply lines stretched thin. The 4th Armored Division, one of the best American tank units, had pushed forward, taking a bridgehead over the Mosel River near Aricourt. German High Command saw the danger if Patton's tanks reached the Rhine and crossed into Germany. The heart of the Reich would be at risk. General Hasso von Manteuil of the 5th Panzer Army got orders to counterattack, destroy the American bridgehead, and push back Patton's forces. The German force put together for this fight included 2 new panzer brigades, the 111th and 113th, mostly armed with Panther tanks. Fresh from the factories on paper, the German edge looked huge. The 2 brigades had about 150 tanks against Combat Command A of the 4th Armored Division, which had around 50 Sherman tanks. The 113th Panzer Brigade alone went into battle with about 90 tanks and assault guns in both battalions together, including 42 Panthers and 40 Panzer IVs. German planners expected a quick victory. The Panthers seemed technically superior, and commanders thought that would beat American logistics and air support, but they were wrong. The Battle of Aricourt, fought over 11 days from September 18th to 29th, became the largest tank fight American forces saw until the Battle of the Bulge. It proved that American tank crews, if trained and equipped, could defeat better German tanks by using smarter tactics, working with other units, and combined arms support and careful use of high-velocity armor-piercing rounds. The morning of September 19th started with thick fog. Over the rolling land around Aricourt, German scouting was poor. The Panzer brigades with no proper scouts moved into ground, held by Americans who knew the area and had set up defenses. At about 8 in the morning, parts of the 113th Panzer Brigade broke through American outposts east and south of Aricourt. The German tanks, new Panthers, with inexperienced crews moved in column. A mistake that experienced American tankers used to their advantage. Captain Kenneth R. Lamison C. Company. 37th Tank Battalion held key approaches to Aracourt. His Sherman crews had been briefed on the HVAP rounds in their ammo racks, 6 rounds per tank, and told to use them against Panther turrets or mantlets at ranges where speed still allowed. Penetration. The fog that blocked German scouting now helped the American defenders. A group of Lamison's Shermans held positions south of the village when the first Panther appeared from the mist, only 75 meters away. At this distance, the Panther's better long-range gun skill meant nothing. The American gunner fired immediately. The HVAP round, moving over 1,000 meters per second, hit the Panther's gun mantlet. The tungsten carbide core pierced the curved cast steel and set off. The ammo stored just below the gun breech. The Panther exploded its turret, lifting a little from the blast. 2 more Panthers came out of the fog quickly. Both were destroyed in seconds, giving their crews no time to fire back in the low visibility. The other German tanks turned away, crews stunned by losing 3 Panzers to what they had been told were weaker American tanks. Throughout the morning of September 19th, similar fights happened across the Aracourt area American tanks used. The fog to hide and attacked Panthers at ranges where HVAP rounds worked best. The German attack plan failed, advancing in columns without scouts. Panther crews kept showing their thinner side armor to American flanking fire near Aracourt's command. Post a platoon of M18 Hellcat tank destroyers, also with 76mm guns, and HVAP ammo, fought German tanks at close range. The fast Hellcats were deadly in the close fog. By noon, as the fog lifted, American artillery observers could guide fire with tank companies. P-47 Thunderbolt fighters of the 405th Fighter Group came overhead, diving through cloud gaps to hit German tanks with rockets and machine guns. The combination of American advantages became obvious. While the ID Panther had better armor and guns as a single weapon, but American forces used combined arms tactics as standard procedure. German tanks moved forward with no artillery support, no air cover, and no infantry to clear American defenses. American forces combined tanks with artillery, air power, infantry, and tank destroyers in a system that overpowered German technical advantages. When Panthers hit these prepared defenses, they were destroyed one by one, despite being technically better HVAP ammo. Did not make Shermans equal to Panthers on paper, but battles are not fought only by technical specs. Tanks are taken out by crews who find weaknesses in real combat. The Panther's gun mantlet needed for the 75mm gun to move up or down and side to side created a weak spot. The joint between turret and hull, the side armor and the engine deck were all targets that HVAP Shermans could now hit safely at ranges that before had been deadly. Even worse for German morale was realizing. Their armor was not invincible. Panther crews had been trained to think their tanks could not be pierced from the front by American guns. Intelligence briefings stressed the Shermans' weak firepower. Crews were told if they kept the front toward the enemy, they were safe. The first Panther commanders who saw Sherman rounds go through their mantlets and blow up ready ammo learned the truth. Survivors of these fights took that knowledge back to their units, spreading the word that American tanks now had shells that could defeat Panthers. By the afternoon of September 19th, German tank commanders were telling headquarters that American Shermans had new, stronger ammunition. The reports were mixed and confusing. Some said the Americans had secretly sent tank destroyers with 90mm guns. Others thought the British had given 17-pounder Firefly tanks to American units. The real truth that American factories had made special shells that partly canceled the Panthers. Armor advantage was more worrying to German planners than any of these ideas. It showed that American industry could solve battlefield problems faster than German factories could keep up. The fighting went on through September 22nd when the main German attacks finally stopped. American forces had destroyed or disabled about 86 German tanks and assault guns. American losses were 25 Sherman tanks and 7 tank destroyers. The kill ratio favored Americans strongly, even though individual tanks were technically weaker. The Battle of Aricourt was not just a tactical win, but a psychological turning point. American tank crews learned they could beat Panthers without waiting for special tank destroyers or huge air support. German crews lost the mental comfort of thinking their front armor was unbeatable. From the German side, Aricourt was confusing and full of blame. The 113th Panzer Brigade, which had entered battle with about 90 tanks, and assault guns had fewer than 20. Vehicles working by September 29th, German reports tried to explain the defeat. The Panthers' technical superiority was clear on paper. How had inexperienced crews in new tanks been beaten so completely? The answers were partly in training. And experience. The Panzer Brigade crews had very little training, often arriving at the front with only weeks of instruction. American tank crews in the 4th Armored Division were experienced, having fought across France, knowing combined arms, tactics, and able to read terrain for advantage. But training alone did not fully explain Panther losses, especially the penetrations that should not have happened with standard American shells. German intelligence officers checking destroyed Panthers saw entry holes smaller than expected, showing a sub-caliber projectile. Checking unexploded rounds near disabled tanks revealed the truth. The Americans had used tungsten core ammunition. This had big strategic meaning. Germany had made similar shells, the Panzergranit 40, using tungsten cores to improve penetration. But by late 1944, German tungsten supplies were very limited, with production going to machine tools instead of ammunition. If Americans could supply specialized tungsten core shells in enough numbers for frontline tanks, it showed industrial power and resource access Germany could not match. American tanks were not only more numerous and better supported, but also had ammo that partly canceled Germany's carefully built armor advantages. The effect of HVAP ammo went beyond the immediate results at Aricourt. As word spread through American armored units that the new shells could beat Panthers under the right conditions, tank crews became more willing to fight. German tanks, directly. The mental fear that had affected some units in tough Normandy battles started to fade. Crews still respected the Panthers' abilities, but no longer felt helpless. This change in morale was critical for later operations. A crew that believes it can fight will act aggressively, looking for better positions and taking smart risks. A crew that thinks it is outmatched will hesitate, giving the enemy the edge. HVAP ammunition, though in very short supply, gave American tankers a weapon that let them fight Panthers on more equal terms. Even crews who had never fired an HVAP round gained confidence, knowing the ammo existed and might be there when most needed. Commanders had to make hard choices with the limited HVAP supply. Tank destroyers, whose job was mainly to fight tanks, got first priority. Sherman tanks, with their double role of supporting infantry and fighting armor, often got fewer rounds, even though they met enemy tanks more often. This caused tension between tactical needs and supply limits. The allocation system managed at many command levels, from Army down to battalion, caused inefficiencies. Some units got more HVAP than they could use, while others ran out in days and got no resupply even with urgent requests. When German forces launched their surprise attack in the Ardennes in December 1944, American tank units faced heavy pressure. The Battle of the Bulge had hundreds of Panthers and Tiger tanks in winter conditions that favored defense and limited Allied air support because of bad weather. American Sherman crews relied strongly on their scarce HVAP ammo to fight German heavy tanks. The shortage became critical after just a few days of intense fighting. Some units used up all their HVAP and resupply requests went unfulfilled as supply lines struggled to move ammo through snow-blocked roads disrupted by German advances. Yet even in the hard fighting of the Ardennes, American forces showed that tactical skill and combined arms teamwork could make up for technical weakness. Tank crews worked closely with infantry, using bazooka teams to disable Panthers from close up, while Shermans gave covering fire artillery forward. Observers called in precise missions that damaged optics, broke tracks, and killed exposed crew members, even when shells could not pierce armor. Air support, when weather allowed in late December and January, was very effective against German tanks concentrated on roads. The Battle of the Bulge ended with German armored forces destroyed, losing hundreds of irreplaceable tanks and skilled crews in an attack that failed to meet its goals. By early 1945, the strategic situation had shifted decisively and permanently. In favor of the Allies, American and British forces were preparing to cross the Rhine. Soviet armies were advancing from the east, having broken German defenses in massive winter attacks. Germany's industrial strength was collapsing under combined strategic bombing loss of territory, with key resources and factories, and severe shortages of raw materials, including fuel and tungsten. Panther production, which had reached 3,900 units in 1944, dropped sharply. In early 1945, as factories were bombed, transport networks broken, and raw materials unavailable. Even when Panthers were made, fuel shortages often kept them from moving. German tank units in the final months often abandoned tanks, not because of battle damage, but because they had no fuel to run them. The technical limits of HVAP, while less talked about than its successes, deserve study for historical completeness. The tungsten carbide core, while excellent at piercing armor, when conditions were right, the tungsten core was naturally brittle. Below certain impact speeds, about 2,300 to 2,500 feet per second, the core could break on contact instead of penetrating. This meant HVP worked much less well at longer distances where speed dropped. The effective range against Panther mantlets was about 1,000 meters. Beyond that, the chance of the core breaking on impact rose sharply. American tankers learned these limits through combat, sometimes with tragic results. Crews that fired HVAP at Panthers beyond its range wasted rare ammo and often drew return fire from German guns that worked at much longer distances. Training on how to use HVAP properly was often minimal, because the ammo reached frontline units faster than training could be given. Many crews learned how to use it through trial and error under real fighting conditions. Sergeant Francis Baker's recorded experience on November 20, 1940. 4 showed both the power and limits of HVAP in real combat. His Sherman, with a 76mm gun and carrying HVAP rounds, fought a Panther at about 800 yards. Baker's gunner fired at least 7 rounds, hitting the Panther's side armor several times. To Baker's frustration, the rounds bounced off without going through. The fight showed that even HVAP had serious limits against sloped armor at angles. The Panther withdrew from the fight instead of continuing, so the action was not a total tactical failure, but it reminded Sherman crews that HVAP was not a magic solution. Proper tactics, careful aiming, the right range, and good angles of attack were still very important. HVAP gave American tankers much better chances. But success still needed skill and judgment. Post-war study of HVAP ammo showed both its strengths and limits. Against the Panther's gun mantlet, at ranges up to 1,000 meters, HVAP was very effective when it hit, often going through and causing huge secondary explosions. Against the Glacis plate, results were poor, except at very close range and good angles. The steep slope meant tungsten core rounds at high speed often bounced or broke on impact. This meant Sherman crews still had to move for better angles, hitting Panthers from the side when possible. The ammo did not make Shermans technically equal to Panthers, but it gave American crews a real chance in fights, where before frontal penetration was nearly impossible. The Korean War, starting in June 1950, gave another test of HVAP American Sherman tanks, now mostly the M4A3E8 model, with 76mm guns, faced Soviet-built T-34-85 tanks in North Korean and later Chinese service. Unlike Europe, where HVAP had been very scarce by 1950, tungsten was no longer limited by war needs, and large stocks were available. American tank crews in Korea found HVAP rounds easily went through T-34-85 armor at normal fighting ranges. The T-34-85, while strong, had armor protection much weaker than the Panther. Its 90mm turret front and 45mm Glacis plate could not stop tungsten core projectiles fired at high speed from 76mm guns. American Shermans in Korea scored very favorable kill ratios against communist tanks, due partly to better crew training, but also because HVAP ammo was plentiful. The success of the 76mm Sherman in Korea was bittersweet for veterans of Europe. The ammo that could have been used more widely in Europe proved deadly in Asia when supply limits no longer restricted use. The German view of American HVAP ammo from post-war questioning and captured documents showed grudging professional respect and deep frustration. German ordnance officers admitted American industry had solved the tungsten core ammo problem better than German factories. Even though Germany had pioneered the technology and made tungsten core rounds with the Panzer Granit, 40 series production limits meant these rounds were never made in enough numbers. American HVAP production, though also limited by tungsten scarcity, still far exceeded German ability. By late 1944, German tank crews interviewed after the war often said American ammo improvements were a major factor that made their tactical situation harder. Knowing Sherman tanks could pierce Panther mantlets at combat ranges meant German crews could not just rely on frontal armor. This forced slower advances, more caution, and greater dependence on defensive positions, but defensive warfare gave initiative to American forces, letting them use combined arms tactics that canceled German advantages. The mental effect of losing armor invulnerability added to the more defensive mindset of German tank operations in 1945. Technical study of HVAP rounds recovered from German tank wrecks gave German engineers a clear understanding of American ammo design. The tungsten carbide core, surrounded by light aluminum body parts, used scarce strategic materials, efficiently maximizing penetration. While using less tungsten per round, the lightweight carrier allowed higher speed shots without extra barrel wear, while the dense tungsten core kept energy over distance far better than steel penetrators. German engineers saw these benefits, but lacked the factories and materials to make similar rounds. By late 1944, German tank and ammo production focused only on keeping output of existing designs instead of making new ammo types. The Panther's KWK 4275 mm gun already had excellent penetration with standard shells against Allied tanks. So making better German rounds was not a top priority. Making new ammo would need tungsten. Germany could not spare and retooling that bombed factories could not handle German tanks in the final year used ammo designs from 1942 and 1943. While American ammo kept improving, the Battle of Aracourt mattered far beyond immediate tactical results. The fight proved that American armored doctrine focusing on mobility, combined arms, teamwork, superior logistics, and overwhelming material support could consistently beat German tactics that relied heavily on superior individual tank performance. German commanders had built their 1944 Panzer brigades around the Panthers. Technical abilities, thinking armor, and firepower would make up for inexperienced crews and limited support. This idea proved disastrously wrong. The lesson was clear to military observers. On both sides, technical excellence in weapons mattered and gave advantages, but operational excellence in combined arms warfare, better logistics, and improved training mattered more for achieving real tactical and operational success. The effect of HVAP on individual tank crews deserves attention beyond just technical analysis. For American tankers who had faced Panthers with only standard shells during tough Normandy battles, the arrival of HVAP gave real hope the ammo did not remove the Panther threat, but provided a tool that gave reasonable chances of penetration under good conditions. This mental boost led to better performance and bolder tactics. For German tankers, knowing American tanks now posed a real frontal threat. Changed tactical thinking. Otto Cararius, a highly decorated German tank ace who commanded Tigers and survived the war, wrote in his post-war memoirs about the psychological effect of facing enemies who could pierce his armor. The sense of being invulnerable that thick armor gave was key to morale and aggressive tactics. When that sense disappeared, crew performance dropped. Panther crews facing HVAP Shermans felt this loss of confidence. The mantlet became a known weak spot that skilled American crews could hit. This made Panther crews noticeably more cautious, slower to engage, and generally less willing to take risks. The strategic meaning of HVAP development also relates to broader questions about technological competition in modern war and the vital role of industrial capacity. Both American and German research teams had skilled engineers and deep knowledge of ballistics and armor penetration. Both saw the value of tungsten core ammo early, and both made functional designs. The crucial difference was industrial capacity and resource access, not scientific knowledge. American factories could make HVAP in numbers enough to affect battlefield outcomes, even if not enough to fully equip all units German factories could barely make. Enough for testing. This pattern repeated across many weapon systems during the war. Germany made sophisticated and often technically better weapons, but could not produce them in numbers to affect strategy. American industrial capacity produced less advanced but very effective gear in huge numbers. The M4 Sherman was not technically the best tank of World War II, but American factories made about 49,324 of them, compared to about 6,132 Panthers. This 8-to-1 production ratio, combined with ammo improvements like HVAP that narrowed the technical gap, was strategically decisive. The post-war careers of veterans who fought at Aracourt show the lasting impact of these experiences on military thinking. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, who commanded the 37th Tank Battalion at Aracourt, with distinction became United States Army Chief of Staff and gave his name to the M1 Abrams main battle tank. The lessons Abrams learned about combined arms warfare, the importance of crew training and having enough ammo, influenced his career and the doctrine he helped create. The M1 Abrams was designed with a powerful 120mm smoothbore gun and advanced ammo types, including depleted uranium penetrators that functionally served the same role HVAP had in World War II. German veterans of Panther units, who survived and later joined the West German Bundes, learned different but equally important lessons. They experienced firsthand the limits of having technological superiority without the industrial base and logistics to support it. Bundes armor doctrine in the Cold War emphasized quality and training while recognizing West Germany could not match Soviet numbers, but Bundes planners guided by wartime experience also stressed ammo effectiveness. The Leopard 1 and later Leopard 2 main battle tanks used advanced ammo designs based on the idea that ammo technology and crew skill mattered as much as armor thickness. The end of World War II in Europe, marked by Germany's unconditional surrender on May 8, 1945, ended the immediate tactical need for HVAP against Panthers, American ordnance officers. Checking destroyed vehicles found clear proof of HVAP penetrations on some wrecks, confirming its effectiveness under good conditions, while noting limits. Panthers hit by HVAP usually showed penetrations through the mantlet or turret face at favorable angles, but rarely through the glacis plate, which stayed highly resistant. This confirmed American tactical doctrine that stressed flanking and creating good engagement angles. Post-war study concluded that while HVAP greatly improved Sherman ability against heavy German tanks, the truly decisive factors were overwhelming numbers, far better logistics, complete air superiority, superior artillery support, and better operational doctrine. The change in American tank crews from mid-1944 to early 1945 showed the combined effect of combat experience, better equipment, and familiarity with specialized ammo, including HVAP crews who landed in Normandy in June 1944 often felt real fear facing German tanks, especially Panthers and Tigers. By early 1945, after months of continuous combat, major training improvements, more 76 millimeter Shermans, and growing knowledge of HVAP American tankers approached fights much more confidently. This mental shift had direct tactical effects. Confident crews fought more aggressively, took calculated risks when chances appeared, and used tactical advantages. While HVAP alone did not create this change, its availability and proven power meaningfully improved American armored morale and tactical performance. The legacy of HVAP continues to influence modern ammo design. American armor doctrine from 1945 onward consistently stressed ammo effectiveness as a key part of tank design. Modern tank ammo uses depleted uranium or tungsten alloy penetrators materials chosen for essentially the same density and hardness that made tungsten carbide effective in World War II. The principle remains the same. Concentrate maximum kinetic energy into a small, very dense projectile moving at the highest possible speed. The line from 1944 HVAP to today's armor-piercing, discarding sabot ammo shows how lessons from World War II still shape military technology. Soviet and later Russian tank ammo development followed similar paths, recognizing independently that armor-piercing depends heavily on projectile material and kinetic energy. The global tank ammo industry has its roots in the HVAP experience, where engineers first proved that specialized ammo could partially overcome armor advantages. September 19, 1944, when First Lieutenant Merwin Men's Sherman crews first fought Panthers with HVAP at Aracourt, marked a real turning point in the mental balance of armored warfare. German crews who had fought confidently behind their armor learned American tanks could be a serious frontal threat. American crews who had felt outmatched gained real confidence, knowing they had ammo that could defeat Panthers under good conditions. This change in tactical psychology, enabled by tungsten core ammo made in American factories, affected every later armored fight in Europe. HVAP, though never in enough quantity, provided enough improved capability to turn American tank crews from hesitant defenders into confident attackers willing to fight German armor directly. The crews who fired those first HVAP rounds in combat, watching tungsten cores pierce armor that had seemed invincible, showed that industrial capacity and material science applied smartly to urgent tactical problems could beat seemingly impossible technical disadvantages. This key lesson learned at high cost on European battlefields remains directly relevant for military planners facing modern technological challenges.